The refugee ship Sanctuary's end limped through the void, its hull scarred by plasma burns and its engines barely functional. Inside the cramped corridors, 3,000 Zelthani huddled together, their crystalline skin dulled by exhaustion and despair. They had been wandering for 18 months, seeking asylum from a galaxy that had turned its back on them. James Morrison stood at the observation deck of the Earth Defense Station Aegis, watching the alien vessel approach. As the station's diplomatic liaison, he had seen many first contacts, but nothing quite like this. The ship's distress signals painted a grim picture, a species fleeing genocide, rejected by every civilized world they had encountered. "Sir," came the voice of Lieutenant Fiza Rahman from behind him. The young communications officer's dark eyes reflected the starlight streaming through the viewport. "We're receiving a transmission from the refugee vessel. They're requesting permission to enter Earth's solar system." James nodded grimly. He had already reviewed the files. The Zelthani had approached the Galactic Council, the Terran Federation's allies, seeking sanctuary after their homeworld was destroyed by the ruthless Vaktar Empire. Every member species had cited security concerns, resource limitations, or cultural incompatibilities. Even the supposedly enlightened Etherians had claimed their meditation worlds couldn't accommodate such emotionally turbulent beings. "What's Earth Command's position?" James asked. Fiza consulted her tablet. "Admiral Chen wants a full security assessment. The Joint Chiefs are concerned about setting a precedent, and the Colonial Administration is worried about resource allocation." James understood their concerns. Earth had only recently joined the galactic community, and humanity was still proving itself worthy of membership. Taking in refugees that the established powers had rejected could be seen as either admirable idealism or dangerous naivety. "Patch me through to their ship," James ordered. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a Zelthani female whose translucent features bore the weight of unimaginable loss. Her name, according to the files, was Resonance of Distant Stars, a former cultural attaché turned reluctant leader of the survivors. "I am James Morrison, representing Earth's government," he said, his voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. "We've received your request for asylum." Resonance of Distant Stars bowed her head, a gesture that somehow transcended species barriers. "We know your people are young to the galaxy, James Morrison. We do not expect miracles. But we hoped. Perhaps those who remember struggle might show mercy, where others show only calculation." Behind James, Fiza stepped closer to the screen. Her own family had fled persecution decades ago, finding refuge in Canada before she was born. The parallels weren't lost on her. "How many of your people need medical attention?" Fiza asked, her voice gentle but professional. "Nearly half," came the reply. "Our children especially. They have known nothing but the inside of ships for too long." James made a decision that would echo through history. "Maintain your current heading. You have permission to enter Earth space. We'll escort you to Lunar Station 7 for processing." The relief on Resonance of Distant Stars' face was unmistakable, but she remained cautious. "The galaxy has taught us to expect conditions, James Morrison. What do you require of us? Basic health screenings, registration for our refugee assistance program, and patience while we work out the logistics," James replied. "That's all." The transmission ended, and Fiza turned to him with wide eyes. "Sir, Earth Command hasn't actually approved this yet." James smiled grimly. "Then we better make sure they do. Get me Admiral Chen." The next few hours were a whirlwind of heated discussions, emergency sessions, and diplomatic maneuvering. James found himself defending humanity's decision to a galaxy that watched with bemused interest. The Galactic Council's representative, a haughty Vorthan named Kreth, was particularly vocal. "This is precisely why humanity isn't ready for full membership." Kreth's synthesized voice crackled through the communication array. "You act on emotion rather than logic. These Zelthani could be carrying diseases, harboring terrorists, or simply prove too much of a burden for your primitive infrastructure." Fiza, monitoring the conversation, saw James's jaw tighten. She had worked with him long enough to recognize that look. "Respectfully, Kreth," James replied, his tone diplomatically neutral. Humanity has some experience with refugees. We've found that people fleeing genocide rarely pose a security threat to those offering them sanctuary. As for our primitive infrastructure, we're managing just fine. What followed was unprecedented in galactic history. Within 72 hours, Earth's orbital facilities were converted into temporary shelters. Volunteer doctors, teachers, and engineers poured in from every nation. The Zelthani children, who had known only the sterile corridors of refugee ships, found themselves in recreation areas filled with human toys and laughter. Fiza often visited the temporary settlements, serving as a liaison and translator. She watched human children teaching Zelthani youngsters how to play soccer with anti-grav modifications, saw elderly humans sharing stories with Zelthani elders, their words bridging species through universal gestures and emotions. "Your people are remarkable," resonance of distant stars told James during one of his visits. "The galaxy speaks of humanity as impulsive and dangerous. They do not mention your capacity for hope." James shrugged. Maybe that's because hope looks dangerous to those who've forgotten how to feel it. 6 months later, the first Zelthani colonies were established on Mars and Europa. Their crystalline architecture began rising alongside human habitats, creating something entirely new. The Zelthani brought advanced hydroponics and energy crystallization technologies, while humans shared their expertise in adaptation and resilience. The galaxy watched in amazement as Earth's population grew by 3 million overnight. With minimal social upheaval and remarkable integration success, other species began to take note. The Kithera, fleeing economic collapse, tentatively approached Earth's embassies. The Morden, displaced by environmental catastrophe, sent quiet inquiries about human refugee policies. Fiza, now promoted to Director of Interspecies Relations, stood beside James as they watched the sunset from New Geneva's observation deck. Below them, human and Zelthani families walked together through parks where earth trees grew alongside crystalline gardens. "The Galactic Council is requesting a meeting," she reported. "They want to discuss formalizing Earth's role in refugee resettlement." James chuckled. "Suddenly we're not so primitive anymore." "Kraith specifically requested to visit our model integration facilities," Fiza added with a smile. "Apparently, the Vorthan homeworld is facing some immigration pressures of their own." As night fell over the integrated city, bioluminescent Zelthani art installations began to glow alongside human streetlights, creating a tapestry of light that neither species could have imagined alone. The galaxy had turned away the desperate and displaced, but Earth had opened its doors, and in doing so had shown the universe something it had forgotten: that true strength lay not in excluding others, but in making room for them at the table. In the end, humanity's greatest export wasn't technology or culture. It was the radical idea that everyone deserved a home.